Today is the first day of Kwanzaa, and we have Dr. Al Guye out of Las Vegas, Nevada, who is um, very well versed in Kwanzaa. Um, it was his second set of principles that he said he learned of in life. We share the first common principles between each other. I won't go into it, but Dr. Guye, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much. I would like to invite the members of our Juneteenth committee to view my Kwanzaa presentation on YouTube. This presentation was recorded on Wednesday of this week, and what makes it significant is the fact that one of the primary sponsors of this Kwanzaa presentation was the National Juneteenth Observance Foundation of Nevada. And the presentation is actually the complete enactment of the Kwanzaa celebration. So since I'm not visually able to make a presentation to you this morning, I would like to invite you and your family during the next week, since we celebrate Kwanzaa for a week beginning today, to go to Kwanzaa 2020 Las Vegas and view our Kwanzaa presentation. Since I was unable to actually make a presentation, I thought it would be appropriate to share with you some basic concepts that Dr. Karinga has shared with us as we celebrate. You know, this year represents the 54th anniversary of Kwanzaa. So we join Dr. Karinga and our brothers and sisters around the world in our celebration that begins today and will last through January 1st. From Dr. Karinga, his message says that this year we have seen the further growth of the holiday of Kwanzaa. Its growth as a holiday among African American people, not just in the United States, but in Africa, Brazil, other countries in South America and Canada, Caribbean, in Britain and other European countries, and now this year in India. Kwanzaa grows among African people because it speaks to their needs and appreciation of our cultural vision and life-affirming values, values which celebrate and reinforce family, community, and culture. Kwanzaa grows because it represents in important ways how African Americans speak their own special truth in a multicultural world. It grows because it reaffirms a rich, most ancient traditions which lay claims to first religious, ethical, and scientific texts, and introduce to the basic disciplines in our own culture in a rich and meaningful way. And as it grows because it brings us together from all countries, all religions, all traditions, all classes, all ages and generations, and all political persuasions on a common ground. The vision and values of Kwanzaa revolve around the practice of 5 fundamental activities which we celebrate: reinforce family, community, and culture, and I'll share the others with you as I go along. First of all, Kwanzaa is a time of ingathering, an ingathering of people, the rich and various human harvest. It is a time to come together and reinforce our bonds between us as a people in spite of our diversity. Thus, Africans who are Muslim, Christian, Jews, Hebrews, followers of ancient tradition of Yoruba, Mat, Dogon, Ashanti, Dinka, and other religious traditions all celebrate Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa is very unique, for it is a cultural holiday, not a religious one. Indeed, African culture is diverse and the home of immeasurable religious traditions. Likewise, old and young reach across generations and embrace and find in Kwanzaa a common ground in heritage and promise. Kwanzaa is a time of special reverence to the Creator and the creation. It is then a time of thanksgiving for good in life itself, for love, for friendship, for parents and children, and elders and youth, men and women, and for family, for women and the whole family, community and culture. They're all a part of what Kwanzaa is. As a harvest celebration, Kwanzaa is also a time of thanksgiving for this earth and for all that is in it, the humans, the birds, the animals, the plants, all of the living things, water, air, land, anything of matter. Thus, Kwanzaa is a time, in addition, for moral commitment to honor the Creator by creating the creation and recommending ourselves to respect and preserve it. Kwanzaa is a time for commemoration of the past. There are three basic phases of Kwanzaa: the past, the present, and the future. And of course, that's represented in the bandera that we have on our Kwanzaa table. That's the African flag of liberation, red, black, and green, given to us by the late Dr. Marcus Garvey. It is then a time of honoring the moral obligation to remember and praise those on whose shoulders we stand. So one of the things that we do in our Kwanzaa celebration, as we start our celebration with an Arambe, the first activity in our celebration is the pouring of libations. And as we pour libations, this is a tradition and culture that goes back to the Book of Anai, which is around 1235. So the process of Kwanzaa is something that's deep in the root of African culture. And this morning, for my first Kwanzaa at 5 o'clock this morning, I spoke to my daughter in Dallas, Texas, and I gave her her Kwanzaa message. And she said, you know, Dad, they never said anything about Kwanzaa or Juneteenth when we were in school. And I said, why hasn't the dominant culture included in its educational process anything about us? Because they know of our greatness. They know that we were not just the first people to walk on the face of the earth. Archaeologists and anthropologists, scientists have studied and researched and come to the conclusion that the first human being to walk on the face of this earth was African Eve, a Black woman born at the foot of Mount Kilimanjaro in southeastern Africa. I live in Las Vegas, Nevada. I live in the city of light, the entertainment capital of the world. And since I've been here, they've blown up and tore down about at least a half dozen casinos. Now, what is the relevance of that to what I'm talking about? Well, because the culture that we're a part of today, after a very short time, they blow it up because it becomes obsolete. African tradition and African culture will last like the pyramid. And so, as we pour libations, we pour water into the ground to nourish those who have gone before us, to pay respect to those on whose back we stand. One of the great Egyptians of all time, Imhotep, architect and builder of the pyramid. Gee, couldn't we use a young Black Imhotep in this day and age? Not just to help us to build physical structure, but to build a moral fiber for the African American community that will help us to move toward the great good life, which is what Kwanzaa is all about. So we praise our ancestors by pouring libation. And as we pour libation into the ground, we call forth our ancestors and those who have gone before us. Not just Hotep, but Harriet Tubman and Fannie Lou Hamer, and Breonna Taylor, W.E.B. and Booker T, and Zinga, Toure, and Nat Turner, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Ida B. Wells and Billie Holiday, Rodney King and George Floyd, grandmothers, grandfathers, aunts, uncles, neighbors, and teachers who taught us how to love. And as you celebrate your Kwanzaa during the next week, raise and praise the name of those who gave their lives that we might further and more meaningful be involved, not just in Juneteenth, but in the celebration of our African American culture. Kwanzaa is a time to appreciate our role as heirs of custodians of a great legacy, and to recommit ourselves to honoring it by preserving it and expanding it. And all of those of you who are in the sound of my voice today are people who are demonstrating to me today a commitment to that principle. Because as I spoke with my daughter this morning, she said the only thing that slaves celebrated was the 4th of July. And yet, after the Civil War, there was no mention of the celebration of Juneteenth. And now we're coming to realize that, hey, Juneteenth is us. It's ours. Hey, it is ours. And the world is ours. And unless and until we step up and say to the world, this is who we are and this is our world, they will continue to give us what they want us to have. Remember, we cannot expect any individual organization or institution to do for us what we have to do for ourselves. We are, as African people, fathers and mothers of humanity and human civilization, sons and daughters of the Holocaust of enslavement, and authors and heirs of the reaffirmation of our Africanness that began to really manifest itself in the 1960s when a young man, Malana Karinga, stepped up and created a process called Kwanzaa that simply helps to give us some direction on how we can begin to live the good life. And that process is basically structured and centers around a set of principles to live by. 7 principles. UMOJA Unity, Kujichagulia self-determination, Ojima collective work and responsibility, Ujama cooperative economics, Nia purpose, Kuumba creativity, and Imani faith. So every day during the next week, I would encourage all of us to study the principles of Nguzo Zapa. Today is the first day. I hope that you would participate in Kwanzaa, and you can do it simply. You can have a karamu. Well, what is a karamu, Guerrier? Well, we karamu every night. We eat dinner. Karamu is the name of the African feast. So when you sit down at the table with your family today, say to them, today we celebrate and recognize the principle of unity. And talk with your family about unity, about what it is. And go online or do a minimum amount of research to find what the principles are if you aren't familiar with it. And each day in the next week, begin to discuss with your family and friends the principles of Nguzo Zapa. They are the basis, the foundation for us as a people as far as direction toward living the good life. And as I conclude, I say to you that the good life ends, and something happens beyond that. We don't know, but we all would like to think positively about the next life and about our soul. And the great book that we all study, be it the Quran, the Bible, it tells us how to save our immortal soul. And it's a really simple story. It simply goes, love God and love yourself. Yes, love yourself. And Kwanzaa is a process that teaches us a set of values to live a good life. And in living a good life, we can learn to love ourselves. And we have to learn it ourselves. There goes that old principle again. We can't expect any organization, institution, or individual to do for us what we've got to do for ourselves. So we have got to work on ourselves. We've got to learn to love ourselves. There are 2 basic ways of requiring the information and knowledge you need to have. through the halls of learning and the experiences of life. And I've been through the halls of learning, 30 years of it, ending with a terminal degree that taught me nothing about myself and my people. I had to go beyond that process and begin to study myself and my history, who I was and where I came from, before I got to the point where I was ready to embrace my African ancestry. And when I embraced my African ancestry after an extensive study, I came to the realization it set me free and apart, even from my mother and father's 9 other biological children. If you want to be free of the chains of the past, you've got to work at it. It's your responsibility. Let this Kwanzaa period be a time where you make a commitment to begin to know and love yourself, because there is no more potent or powerful knowledge that you can acquire in life than knowledge of self. Thank you, my brothers and sisters. I hope you enjoy the Kwanzaa message from the National Juneteenth Observance Foundation of Nevada. Thank you. It was my pleasure to share myself.
Ashe, and all things Juneteenth. So taking these words to heart, I'd like to have a couple people chime in on what they're thinking.
I know with Brother Kareem.
Yeah, Brother Kareem.
If I may, I know that growing up in that tradition and culture and being able to appreciate it as well, what I've learned about our people is that we will celebrate now these European customs and traditions. And we've come to this time period in our life where we justify our celebrating of these European cultures and traditions, but we'll participate little in our own. And I think that that's what the doc was saying, is that we have to begin to come back to the which is back to our mind consciousness and knowing ourselves, and give these Europeans their tradition, their religion, everything back. This is what my struggle has been, and why I always try every year with Kwanzaa to, for now, not to let it just be a traditional ceremony in Juga Saba that we just basically are celebrating and we go back home. We done said something about these principles, we're really not living them. But I tried now to take and begin to, whatever we go into the last year, we go into now trying to put things with my organization into practice that will help our people understand the value of their own. And so that's what I came away from it with, is that as a people, we must be willing to give up this nostalgia that we have been accustomed to of these European holidays and traditions, and give it up and begin to embrace our own. It lingers on, Kwanzaa, Juneteenth. It lingers on because our people, in the spirit of their sacrifice, their blood, sweat, and tears to be self-determined and to do something for themselves is in us. And so I just pray that this year, going into 221, we begin to, at some point, give Christmas back, give Easter back, give Thanksgiving back, because what the brother just said, he just showed us all of those European holidays, the principles of what they really try to make it out to be is within our Kwanzaa. Thank you.
I like to just draw on African philosophical thought. One comes to mind is that you have to water the thorns in order to enjoy the roses, right? And this is a beautiful thing about our ancestors and our culture, is that is so rich, and it helps us to navigate and deal with the issue of character. Because what we're talking about here is character, and some people have good character, some people have bad character. That doesn't make them a bad person. So when you look at another aspect of African philosophy, you go to Southern Africa, there's a concept called Ubuntu.
Ubuntu, yes, sir.
Ubuntu, all right. And Ubuntu is basically, I am because we are.
Because you are. That's right.
Right. And so we need to keep these things in mind. I understand that there's a lot of history, but we, again, have to interrogate our own character and look inside rather than looking external and pointing the finger. The good thing about all of this is that it is a philosophy that has spread around the country and around the world, Kwanzaa.
Around the world.
Yes. And so regardless of what took place, because again, you got to understand that that was within, all right, the reality of COINTELPRO.
That's right.
All right. So we have to be careful. We have to be careful about going back to that time in making an analysis without taking into consideration
the time
COINTELPRO.
Right.
And if you don't know what that is, and you're making statements like that, then I would suggest that you don't make statements like that until you understand what COINTELPRO actually was.
But I must say to you, if you are a part of Juneteenth, you are a part of the principles of Nguzo Zaba. Because the Juneteenth committee that I joined and have been a part of has demonstrated to me that they are a group of people who demonstrate a staunch effort toward the good life. And I have found the Kwanzaa principles to be an excellent set of values by which I can live my life and can teach my children and those whose hearts and minds are open to what message I bring to live the good life through this principle. And I have found that the Juneteenth Foundation is an organization that has demonstrated to me that it has truly embraced the principles of Nguzo Zaba. And that was one of the reasons why I made a commitment to offer my talent, my ability, and to share with them in helping them to accomplish their objectives. And the bottom line, brothers and sisters, is that we are all victims of the Eurocentric system of education. It is the system of education in place in this country in the 99.999% of the schools here, of which we have all attended, and some of them are called HBCUs, that were designed to destroy us.
That's right.
They were designed in such a way that they systematically excluded the information that we needed to have to be self-actualized, the information we needed to have to feel good about ourselves. And the system of education that we are all victims of has, in essence, taught us to hate ourselves.
Yep.
And the only answer to that is for us to re-educate ourselves. And that begins with my last statement. You have got to study yourself. Know thyself. And when you know yourself, you become a self-assured, positive, self-assured African-American role model. And that's what we need more than anything else. And that's what I see in the membership of the National Juneteenth Observance Foundation.
Steve, in the meantime, can you real quick, can you touch on the posting you did last year connecting Juneteenth with Kwanzaa?
Well, yeah,
I posted it in the chat line for those who can see it. And I did repost it on the Facebook page, Directors and Planners, if you don't have time, because we are running tight.
Yeah, so it's there. I just aligned our philosophies of the National Juneteenth Observance Foundation and integrated them with Kwanzaa. So if you would take a look at it, and then how we to further expand upon that, you know, you have the 7 principles of Kwanzaa, and you have the 12 principles for success as defined by the writings of Frederick Douglass, to give a more detailed guideline on how we should move forward, in case people need just a little bit more. And that's us. We're stiff-necked people, as Moses called us. And so sometimes it's hard for us to move in the right direction.